सवैया जोत जीते इन्हीं के प्रसाद इन्हीं के प्रसाद सुदान करे अक अवगटारे इन्हीं के प्रसाद इन्हीं की कृपा पुण्य धाम भरे इन्हीं के प्रसाद सो विद्यालय इन्हीं की कृपा सब संत मरे नहीं की कृपा के सजे हम हैं नहीं पोसो गरीब करोड़ मरे
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh, and welcome to another episode of the Sikh Renaissance. So, as an update, ex-Khalistani Sangha and Punjabi Zuzu are still refusing to accept our invitation for a debate. However, since our episode exposing Sangha, they have now started changing their story from knowing how to read Hindi and Gurmukhi to now not being able to read either Hindi or Gurmukhi. So the cracks are beginning to appear among their narrative, and it won't be long now before all these clowns end up exposing themselves. So today's agenda is neither Sangha's lies or Puneet Sahani Jiglu's antics throughout the United States and Europe. We will leave that for their temples, considering how their scriptures often have their gods indulging in the most tasteless sexual degeneracy possible. So today we look at something far older and more sinister, and it all starts at Hazur Sahib in 1873. But before that, let us set the scene. The British have taken over Punjab. Sanatan Vedic Hindus and Muslims joined the British as sepoys in warring against Punjab to crush Sikh independence. So the current Sanatani rewriting of history holds that Sikhs betrayed them in their so-called 1857 War of Independence. Far from being a war for independence, it was more or less a war of rape, with Hindu and Muslim mobs raping white men, yep, men, women, and children over some made up pretexts of being forced to use cartridges greased with either cow fat if you were a Hindu or pig fat if you were a Muslim. So, as far as the Sikhs are concerned, now is the time to take revenge and crush these two troublesome enemies that have always been opposed to the house of Guru Nanak. And this is exactly what the Sikhs do. Although a few minor Sikh warriors do join the mutineers, the reality, though, is that the majority of Sikhs join the British in crushing them. So these mutineers, if they can be called that, are actually hell bent on restoring the Mughals back to the Delhi throne and placing Hindustan back under the Muslim command. So the Sikhs whose faith is diametrically opposed to Islam, they see this as a betrayal of their own collective interests, and this is why they decide to rise up against both the Sanatani and the Muslim. So there are also other factors in the background. The British have observed the warlike spirit of the Sikhs. They're aware of the Khalsa and its expansionist spirit. So, to curb it and derail it, they decide to unite with the Punjabi Sanatan Vedic Hindus. And this is where things do get interesting because the impact is being felt even today. So, they conquer the minor Sikh principalities that have avoided Maharaja Ranjit Singh's grasp, and by hook and crook, they reduce Sikh political sovereignty. So, what happens is that the British are well aware of the history of the Sikhs. So, to reiterate from Gyani Gyan Singh's Shamsher Khalsa, before the British entered the subcontinent, the Sikhs were directly warring against both the Sanatan Vedic Hindus and the Muslims. So, after the betrayal and martyrdom of Baba Banda Singh Bahadur in 1716, the Khalsa was exiled to the Punjabi wilderness, but its impact was still felt in Punjab and beyond. So, seeing this, Zakaria Khan, one of the foremost Mughal commanders who would then be the governor of Lahore, invited a mass gathering of Sanatani Hindus and Muslims. And this was done in Lahore. So, they consisted of those Brahmins, Khatris, and Rajputs who were opposed to the very existence of Sikhi. Among them were also the Jata Hindaliyas, the worshippers of Baba Hindal, who were infamous for creating false Sakhis and Granths to fool the Sikhs. They would also later ally themselves with Ahmad Shah Abdali and incite the Vada Kalugara. along with their ideological cousins, the Niranjaniyas. So, in this mass gathering, Zakaria proposes that a three-pronged attack is required against the Khalsa to annihilate Sikhi forever. So the first will obviously be military, where the Khalsa Sikhs will be hunted down and killed. The second one will be social, where villagers and city dwellers will kill their Sikh neighbors. The third will be ideological. Fake cults and sects will be created to infiltrate among the Sikhs and destroy them from within, because their ideology, their philosophy, is quite dangerous. So now the first of these that Gyani Gyan Singh mentions was the Bandai Khalsa. They took the same name as Banda Singh loyalists, but started pushing the myth that Banda Singh was the 11th Guru and not the Guru Granth Sahib or Guru Panth Khalsa. So it was by Mani Singh Ji who finally curbed these fake Bandai. But Gyani Gyan Singh also leaves some cults and sects unmentioned. So these would survive until British times, and the British would breathe new life into them to weaponize them against Sikhi. So let's skip to the 1950s for now. We will get back to the British really soon. So the SGPC is approached by several independent sampradas and jathas to verify their history. There is already a Sant Samaj influence among the SGPC by this point in time. It still is today, and the demand is to reinforce Sant entry into the committee. So the task, the SGPC, the intellectual board allocates this task, this mission, to Bhai Randhir Singh, who's a scholar. So this is not Bhai Randhir Singh of the Akhand Kirtani Jatha. Again, this is not Bhai Randhir Singh of the Akhand Kirtani Jatha. Big difference. So Randhir Singh scholar starts his work, and the reality, his findings, they're all encapsulated in his book Udasi Sikhadi Vidya. So, in it, Randhir Singh shows that several hundred contemporary or near contemporary Sakhis from the first to the third Guru shows that Sri Chand, the so called founder of the Udasis, died during Guru Amar Das Ji's time. So he decides to focus on the Udasis because they're first and foremost in petitioning the SGPC to incorporate them within the Sikh framework. However, the SGPC, many members are hesitant, even though the leadership agrees for the political benefits they can bring, many SGPC members are still hesitant. So Randhir Singh proves why they're hesitant through his works. So these Sakhis he uses show that Shri Chand died during Guru Amar Das Ji's time. He was at Kartarpur after the second Guru left and remained there until he was beaten and driven out by the Sangats for his corruption. So the current narrative is that Shri Chand is the founder of the Udasi Samprada. Surprisingly, there is no record of him ever finding an Udasi Samprada, neither in contemporary and near contemporary Sakhis, nor in contemporary or near contemporary non Sikh records of the time. And there is still a picture of Shri Chand within Darbar Sahib showing him as he was. He was not the naked baboon like Saad, showing today Videsh in his hair, Rafiki from the Lion King style. During Maharaja Ranjit Singh's time, Akali Gurbaksh Singh took an audit of all the Jathas and Sampradas in the Panth. So this is Randhir Singh's findings. Until that time, the term Udasi was not related with Shri Chand in the public imagination or narrative. So who were the Udasis at that time? So they were either the traveling Sikhs or they were just a sect of Punjabi recluses, sadhus who had nothing to do with Sikhi, who were found outside masjids, mandirs, and gurdwaras. So Randhir Singh shows that when Gurbaksh Singh announced his audit, the Udasis of Lahore, who were led by one Sanatani Brahmin named Santaran, they were the most prominent of the Udasis, and Gurbaksh Singh ordered Santaran to appear at Akal Takht and prove the origins of the Udasis and how they were connected to Sikhi. Now, there was a certain event before this where Jathedar Jassa Singh Aluwalia actually had a Gopal Das Udasi, if I'm remembering the name correctly, beaten and dragged out from Shri Darbar Sahib and replaced him with the Chanchal Singh Khalsa head Granthi. So there was already friction between the Sikhs and the Udasis. So now Santaran, who knows that he's going to get a solid thrashing from the Akalis, has to somehow save himself and his, cult. So what he does is he fabricates a hagiographical text and he calls it the Nanak Vijay or the Nanak Vijay Prakash Granth. And in it, he claims that Guru Har Gobind Sahib Ji started Udasis. So, once again, what Randhir Singh points out here is that there is a massive discrepancy between the modern Udasi narrative and this older narrative, even though they claim that the older narrative is authentic, because they also say that they derive their information from Santaran's works. So, Randhir Singh proves why this is all a lie. Because based on Santaran's own rubbish, Shri Chand was disparaged in Gurbani. And this is true. He is disparaged in Gurbani and the authentic Sakis and the Vars of Bhai Gurdas Ji. So in the Sikh public imagination at the time, his name was a byword for treachery. So to avoid any doubt being cast on his, embellished tale, Santaran claimed that Guru Nanak cursed Shri Chand for his evil-minded ways and then told him that to purify himself, he would have to align himself with Baba Gurditta in Guru Nanak's sixth birth. And that although Guru Nanak wanted him to be the head of the Udasis, but because of his selfishness, it would now be during Baba Gurditta's time that Baba Gurditta would be declared the head of the Udasis when Guru Nanak came as Guru Hargobind Sahib Ji, and Shri Chand would have to purify himself, sanctify himself, earn divine pardon by becoming the slave of Baba Gurditta. So it seems that while the Akalis did not exactly buy this rubbish at the time, the Sikh princes brought it. So they saw the Udasis as being more pliable than the Akalis, especially since after the martyrdom of Akali Baba Phula Singh Ji, they feared the rise of the Akalis to prominence and the destruction of their own creative liberties that they were taking at the time. So up until this point, even if Udasis did take over a Gurdwara, they were kicked out by the Akalis, right? But now the Udasis were anchored within the Sikh heritage by state force. So now the Sikh state or the Sikh empire, including Patiala, which was independent of the empire, was beginning to see them as a much more convenient element that could be used against against the Akalis, who were always holding them to account. But the Udasis were not the only ones. So now some famous Nirmale like Kavi Santaran Prem Singh Ji of Satoki Gali Wali Taksal, and who is supposedly the descendant of Baba Binod Singh Ji, and Gyani Balwant Singh Ji Kotha Guru Wale. They're Nirmalas, but they also cast heavy doubt on the origins of their own sect. So until the 19th century, there is no mention of these Nirmalas either. Suddenly, they pop up with the creation of the Suraj Prakash Granth. Now, Sabinderjeet Singh Sagar, in his analysis of Santokh Singh's Nanak Prakash, implies that they were an offshoot of Handaliye. So, they are not as old as the Guru era, but they're older than at least the Nawab Kapoor Singh era, the Misal era. So, the Handaliyes loved Vedant and weaponized it against Gurmat. The Nirmalas introduced it within the Sikh mystical framework through a Trojan horse strategy, and this is why we're seeing the rubbish of Advaita Vedanta in Sikhi today. So, if anyone is interested, Gyani Balwant Singh Ji has an amazing book on this issue, refuting the entire premise of Advaita Vedanta. He proves its falsity and calls anyone who believes in it, any Sikh who believes in it, a khusra, a namard. So, moving on, Kavi Santaran Prem Singh Ji wrote the Shri Gurpur Prakash in opposition to Santokh Singh's Nanak Prakash and Suraj Prakash. So, in the introduction, he dismisses most of the Suraj Prakash as rubbish, Nanak Prakash as well, and requests that the Panth scholars relook at Santokh Singh's sources before accepting his work as being foolproof. So, these are only two prescient examples we have of Sikh Sampradas being exposed by their own members. But Santaran Prem Singh and Balwant Singh had a point. They were well aware of a previous conflict that had extended all the way from Punjab to Hazur Sahib in Nanded after the fall of the Sikh Empire. So, now getting back to the British, they're well aware that while the Udasis were used by Sikh royalty to control the Akalis after the implosion of the Dal Khalsa by spying on them, the Udasis were not confrontational. They really couldn't put up a fight. So the ones who could really put up a fight against the Akalis were the Nirmalas. So the whole Nirmala story is pretty funny. They claim descent from those five Sikhs Guru Gobind Singh Ji allegedly sent to Kanchi to learn from resident Brahmins. The story runs that they went armed like Khalsa Singhs first, but the Brahmins refused to teach them, so they went back without shastras and kakars, and the Brahmins finally accepted them as students. So their main mission: learn Vedant and teach it through Gurmat or convey Gurmat and Vedant terms. So this obviously begs the following questions: why only Vedant? Why not say any other system like, say, the Islamic system? Two, did the Guru not have prior knowledge of Vedant if it was so crucial for Gurmat Prachar? What did the early Gurus do? Right? Did the Guru not know about the Brahmins' reaction to armed Singhs beforehand? So the Nirmalas have obviously embellished their origin tale heavily, going so far as to lie that they were sent to actually learn Sanskrit and Sanskrit Granths, ignoring that the Gurus and Gursikhs prior to them were well versed in Sanskrit and Sanskrit Granths. So we have Bhai Gurdas, for example, who refers to these sources in his Vars, that were written during the third, fourth, fifth, and sixth Gurus' incumbencies. So the Sikhs had a multilingual, literary tradition even before the 10th Guru. So the question of sending five Sikhs to Kanchi to learn Sanskrit is pretty, stupid and out of it. The reality is that this sect is most likely from the post Banda era, early Nawab Kapoor Singh era. So it was never accepted by the Panth, and the fact it had such a mass literary output indicates it was left well alone to its devices and unmolested by the Mughals and Sanatanis, indicating that it was a state sponsored sect to ideologically and philosophically disenfranchise Sikhs. The main point that made the Nirmala stick out like a sore thumb was not their ideological shenanigans. For the Akalis, it was their refusal to adorn the Panch Kakar and also their practice of shaving their beards. So, we're not making this up. This is all cited, surprise, surprise, in Nadar Singh Nihang and Paramjit Singh's In the Master's Presence, The Sikhs of Hazur Sahib, Volume 1 book. So let us also look at the psyche of the Singhs then, because a question arises here: what the hell were they doing? Didn't any other Singh actually see these fake sampradas taking over and make any noise about this? So from 1800 to 1810 was probably the first time in a near century that the Sikhs were able to reside in one area without having to evacuate due to invading armies and war. They were safe from genocides and foreign invasions. But during the previous bloody decades, a lot of martyrdoms had occurred, and thousands of Sikhs possessing great knowledge had died. They had access to literature, but there was no cohesive archive or body studying it to sift fact from fiction. When such efforts were made, many like Santaran hijacked the process. So in this era, the Udasis and Nirmalas going unchecked was not strange. It was expected. But there was always an air of tension between the Nihangs, the Udasis, and the Nirmalas. So the Udasis were not heavily reliant on literature and education. They were still, sadhu types running around, roaming around, begging for food. And because of this, they weren't exactly as stationary as the Nirmalas, who could be relied on more and more by these corrupt Sikh princes to take over Gurdwaras and start turning the people towards supporting them rather than the Akalis. So the Udasis, in a way, to avoid further conflict with the Nirmalas, they slowly started ingratiating themselves with the Akalis. So they decided that the Akalis could save them. So it was more or less a consensus and alliance of convenience more than anything else. But the Nirmala aggression was what the British decided to use against the Panth. So the British were well aware that the Sikhs in Punjab would not accept the Nirmalas outright as the guardians of their Guru Kars and heritage. Because, after hunting down the Akalis and eminent Gursikhs like Bhai Maharaj Singh, if they actually started sponsoring the Nirmalas and left them untouched, the Sikhs would understand straight away that the Nirmalas were double agents. So what they did was they approached one Mehtab Singh Nirmala. He was a sycophant of Patiala, and he was charged with creating a missile Shaheed type Akali Dal to take over Gurdwaras for the British. The name of this body was to be the Dharm Duja Akhada, right? And the way this would work out was at times the Akhada would oppose the British, but in between it would be supporting the British by deadening the Sikh spirit. So the Nirmalas who dressed in orange discarded the Kakars and focused heavily on Vedant. They disparaged anything to do with weapons and the Khalsa. They also did not eat chatka and instead emphasized vegetarianism. So, to fool the Sikhs in Punjab, Mehtab Singh came up with a new idea. So, the Punjabi Nirmalas would wear white and have their kakars temporarily, and they would not openly question chatka. Outside Punjab, though, it would question chatka, it would also discard the kakars, and it would also discard white. So, this was the plan at the time. But in due time, this also led to a Nirmala versus Nirmala Syapa, which continues to this day. So Gyani Inderjeet Singh, the Rakba Nirmala, actually left the non-Punjabi Nirmalas. He recounts this in his autobiography because he knew that the five Kakars were so ingratiated in the Sikh psyche, the Sikhs would never accept him without them. And because he wanted to stay in Punjab, there was no question of him teaching to non-Sikhs anyway or preaching to non-Sikhs, so he would require those kakars anyway. So he made a big show of leaving the Nirmalas who did not wear these kakars and coming back into Punjab. All this to fool the people. So now the British started supplanting the now, slain Akalis with the Nirmalas that became the new Orthodox Sikh religious class of Punjab. So as the Sikh revolutionaries and those who stood up against the British were slowly killed off, the Nirmalas started filling up the Sikh intellectual and leadership vacuum. So they installed Nirmala Mahants in Gurdwaras and even recruited those Udasis who were happy to support them. But those Udasis who suffered at British hands, they fled to Nashik and Hazur Sahib. So the Hazuri Akalis were not exactly overjoyed to see them, but tolerated them given that the British were also now surrounding Hazur Sahib, and it was more or less a case of my enemy's enemy is my friend. But on the other hand, the Nirmalas were not happy to stay in Punjab either. So they informed the British of Hazur Sahib and how it was furnishing hukamnamas emphasizing the Khalsa identity that the British hated so much, and that these farmans were being secretly smuggled into Punjab to keep the spirit of revolution alive against the British. So the Gora decided to remove the problem at its source and told them, your next target is Nanded. So a certain incident would happen though before the Nirmalas reached Hazur Sahib. So they were given state support and a police guard, India wide, with official English letters of appointment and introduction to be presented to British governors wherever they went. In 1872, they clashed with a band of Udasis who they had driven out from Punjab. And they had these Udasis imprisoned and their property confiscated. And this was at Nashik. So the reason? The Udasis refused to recognize them as Sikhs because they had sold out to the British. Now, news of this clash also reached Hazur Sahib. So by 1873, when the Nirmalas arrived at Hazur Sahib, the situation was more against them than it was with them. So Hazur Sahib itself was in a precarious state. The British had emboldened the Muslims there to harass the Sikhs, but the Sikhs kept themselves heavily armed, and the Sikhs were also prepared to settle old scores with both the Sanatani Hindus and Muslims living around them. So when around mid to late 1873 the Nirmalas finally reached Hazur Sahib, the Takht Jathedar Akali Deva Singh and his band of local Hazuri Singhs were heavily armed and sensitive to even the slightest provocation. So Nidar and Paramjit recount that initially Deva Singh welcomed the Nirmalas and sought news of Punjab. But this was done to lull them into a false sense of security and collect information from them, collect vital intelligence from them. So after receiving what he wanted, he told them to return to the Punjab. The Nirmala said, well, hey, wait up, buddy. We want to do Seva in the Takat. So Deva Singh and the Akalis around him asked whether they were Sikhs, and the Nirmalas replied they were Khalsas. So then Deva Singh asked, where are your Kakars? Because only a Kakar wearing Khalsa can serve in the Takats. This is not our law. This is the law of Tan Sache Pache Guru Gobind Singh Ji. Now, this is a vital point because it is documented in the Nanded Museum as well. and this was before the Singh Sabha Lahore, exactly 6 years before the Lahore Sabha was instituted. And more critically, Sanatan Vedic Hindu terrorist Puneet Sahani worships Hazur Sahib as a Sanatani Hindu Takht while calling the five Kakars false. This whole incident exposes him as a liar. So, Puneet, if you're listening, go back to reading your false Vedas and giving your ass on the US interstate highways. You're suited for that and not history. Now, getting back to the Nirmalas, they refused and started citing their false history. Deva Singh pointed out they had no evidence for whatever ridiculous claims they were making. So the atmosphere became even more hostile when the Hazuri Sangats voiced their opposition to the Nirmala's vegetarianism and their refusal to adorn kakars and their, you know, vilification of Chatka. So then a 16-month standoff ensues. First of all, the British obviously try negotiating with Jathedar Deva Singh, but he refuses to allow the Nirmalas anywhere near the Takht because he knows that they are the Trojan horse for the British. Now, then the Patiala royal family, the chief patron of the Taramduja Khara, jumps in, but the Hazuris declare them as traitors. So, in all this, the Punjabi Akalis and Nihangs who have survived the British purges also touch base with Deva Singh, and they also have others supporting them, the Jathedars of Shri Patna Sahib, Keskar Sahib, and the remaining few Nihang Dals, as well as the descendants of the Gurus and other prominent Gursikh Shaheeds. So the Nirmalas are enraged and they acquire weapons from the British. So around early 1874, they try forcing their way into the Takht after killing two Hazuri Sikhs on guard duty. Deva Singh and the Hazuri Khalsa retaliates like cornered tigers and kills several of these Nirmala cultists before British forces intervene to stop the bloodbath. But this isn't the end of the issue. No way, far from it. So Gulab Singh Nirmala, one of these Nirmala aggressors, who had his rear end handed to him at Hazur Sahib, was also the teacher of Gyani Gyan Singh and Mahant Ganesha Singh. And this is why you can see Gyani Gyan Singh slowly erasing the Akalis from Sikh history and Ganesha Singh outright vilifying them in his Bharat Mat Darpan, as well as the Hazuri Singhs as Amlis, illiterate, backwards, and bearers of the five kakars. So this last one is almost intended as an insult. But on the other hand, the Hazuri Singhs gathered together. So the Taramduja Akhada's rewriting of history in the Punjab around Gurmat and Gurmat Arhat Maryada had not gone unnoticed. So they collect all the Puratan sources, they take Shabads from Gurbani, and they create a Dastar-ul-Amal, or a code of conduct for both Takhats and Takhat Pujaris or Gurdwara custodians. So, 1. The custodians of the Gurdwaras are to have partaken of Khande ki Pohol and they should be wearing the Panchkakar. 2. They were to be Shastrtari and armed at all times. 3. After using Golak money for Gurdwara and the Sikh community, they could deduct preset amounts for their own payment. 4. They were not to tolerate any non Sikh, that is Hindu, Christian, or Muslim, right in their Gurdwaras. And 5. They were to be of Gurmat virtue, that is, have a high moral Gursikh character. Now, up until a certain point, the Sikhs of Nanded had enjoyed great privilege because they were protected by Maharaja Chandulal, a Khatri ruler under the Hyderabadi Nizams. He was also a patron of the Udasis, so this would explain the strong Udasi presence at Hazur Sahib. But this was always like a sword's edge sort of a deal because the Akalis could just as easily turn against the Udasis if they overstepped their limits. So after his demise, his son took a neutral stance insofar as the Sikhs were concerned and their frayed relationship with the British. But nonetheless, the Hazuri Akalis and the Hazuri Singhs wrote out a petition to the Hyderabadi authorities because Hazur Sahib was in Nanded and Nanded was in Hyderabad. So a copy of this petition is found in both the Shri Guru Gobind Singh Ji Museum in Nanded and the Buddha Dal archives in Patiala. So it points out that the way of the Khalsa is defined by the Panchkakar: Kach, Kes, Kirpan, Kanga, and Kada. By the 1880s, the matter was still not resolved as Nirmala aggression had increased Punjab wide, and we know that around the late 1870s, the Lahore Singh Sabha had been incorporated. But its early tracts show that even it was undecided on the Panchkakar. So this was how the situation stood, but Akal Purakh had other plans. So in 1883, Freed Court was openly at odds with Patiala and started hosting those Akalis and Nihangs in its domains who were once exiled from Punjab by the British. So all these Akalis and Nihangs were actually returning from Hazur Sahib, where they had been hiding out in its jungles, and they returned and formed a petition. And this petition was intended to be presented to the British government to enforce the 5Ks and Gurdwaras. So this was the actual genesis of the Gurdwara Sudhar Lahir and the resurrection of the Tat Khalsa movement. Now, Akali Baba Prem Singh and Gurbakh Singh and several other Jathas carried this petition with them and secretly travelled throughout Punjab collecting signatures on it. So, despite British and Nirmala double agents trying to stop them, and even Udasis, they succeeded in their mission. So, who signed this petition? So, first of all, were those Udasis who had a grouse against the Nirmalas. So, Mahant Dhyan Das Udasi, Mahant Brahmanika Udasi, Mahant Gyan Prakash Udasi, Mahant Sant Prakash Udasi, Mahant Seva Das Udasi, and various other of their kind. So, they decided to settle old scores with the Nirmalas by supporting this petition. But the signatures that mattered the most to the Panth at that time were Jathedar Thakur Singh Ji Chamkaur Sahib Wale, Baba Lena Singh, Baba Gurdit Singh, Baba Ram Singh, Baba Tara Singh, Baba Pan Singh, Baba Jeevan Singh Agaraiya, Baba Sardul Singh, Baba Narayan Singh, Baba Nog Singh. So all of them were under surveillance by the British for their anti-British activities. Now, can Puneet and his STD infections explain why anti-British fighters would accept a British imposition of the Panchkakars? Then who else would come in support of this code of conduct from Hazur Sahib? Moving on from Puneet and his STDs. So, the descendants of Guru Nanak through Baba Sahib Singh Ji Bedi, they signed it. The Anandpur Sodis, who were descended from the 4th, 6th, and 7th Gurus. The Palle and the Trehan descendants of the 2nd and 3rd Gurus. Akalis of Damdama Sahib, who were the descendants of Jathedar Karam Singh Ji Shaheed and had a literary tradition going back to Baba Deep Singh Ji. The Sanatan Singh Sabha, yup, they jumped in as well from Amritsar, and the Lahore Singh Sabha. So obviously the Nirmalas were not sitting quietly either, but they had to rely heavily on state support than any support from the Sikh Sangats. So they kept on their rewriting of Sikh history, so they appropriated historical figures ranging from the Gurus to Baba Deep Singh and beyond, arguing that they were all in fact Nirmalas. They created these updated or let's say perverted editions of older texts after entering their own fabrications within them to justify their own existence, and this continued for a long time. So now, as for the Gurdwara Sudhar Leher, it is more than likely that because it was supported by the descendants of the Fulki estates, its leaders conceded ground and left the Nirmalas untouched, considering in Punjab they had evolved into data such as Pindra, Harkowal, even Nanaksar. So where people were actually, going in big numbers. Unfortunately, though, the root issue remains even today their anti Gurmat practices, and this unfortunately has never been addressed. So, as Gyani Balwant Singh ji points out, any work written by the Nirmalas or relying on Nirmala scholarship, Randhir Singh adds in the Udasis as well, needs to be carefully analysed and studied for what it actually offers. Harjot Oberoi, Pashora Singh, MacLeod, and even our very own male prostitute, Puneet Sanatan Sahani, who have a tendency to base their works off Nirmala scholarship, are building their case on very shaky foundations because when the whole Nirmala scam collapses, so will all this so called scholarship. Now, the reality is that the Udasis played it really smart. They decided to join the Singh Khalsa Akalis and save themselves. But in a way, the damage they have done is pretty pernicious, but at the same time, it's similar to what the Nirmalas have done in the Panth. So now is the time when the Sikhs are heavily under attack from both the Sanatani and the non Sanatani world to start finding out the truth of these Sampradas. It's really easy to say we're descended from Baba Deep Singh Ji, we're descended from so and so, we're descended from so and so. But what we need to do is separate any individual achievement from the Samprada itself. And then we need to separate the Samprada from the history it claims and try actually verifying and studying what its real history is, what its true history is. In this way, we will know who's the enemy and who's actually spotting us. And then we will be able to confront all these spiritually unclean, non Sikh aggressors who have made it their life's mission to attack Sikhi. Sikhi is not going anywhere, and we're going to keep fighting back. So, this clash between the Nihangs and the Nirmalas at Hazur Sahib shows how, even in the past, there was no such grand illusion of some interpanthic unity, as most of these sampradas that claim to be Purathan today never existed back then. So, keep vigilant and keep watching the enemy, keep defending Sikhi, keep doing your own research and sharing it. That's all for today. Until next time, Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
सवैया दुत जिते इन्हीं के प्रसाद इन्हीं के प्रसाद सुदान करे अक अवगटारा इन्हीं के प्रसाद इन्हीं की कृपा पुण्य धाम भरे इन्हीं के प्रसाद सो विद्यालय इन्हीं की कृपा सब संत मरे नहीं की कृपा के सजे हम हैं नहीं पोसो गरीब करो